A star of stage, screen, radio, and concert hall. He was also a forerunner in the battle for human rights and dignity. Over the years, Robeson would be both praised and damned for his devotion to this struggle. But it was his choice, and for it, he paid a heavy price.
When you think of the first black superstar, you might think maybe of Denzel Washington or Will Smith, or going back a bit further, maybe Sidney Poitier. But one name kind of reigns above all of those, and that is Paul Robeson, an actor, singer, activist, trained lawyer and athlete, a guy who had it all, and about whom we know too little.
There's an old man called the Mississippi. That's the old man I don't like to be. What does he care if the world's got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free?
It has been said that greatness should not be measured by what one accomplishes, but by the obstacles one must overcome along the way. By that standard, there can be no greater man of accomplishment than Paul Robeson.
Every time I feel the spirit moving.
Born April 9th, 1898, Paul Robeson, prodigious athlete, fiery orator, intellectual powerhouse, and high school valedictorian, attended Rutgers University. Phi Beta Kappa his junior year, valedictorian his senior, he wrote his senior thesis on how the 14th Amendment could assure African American equality 35 years before the Supreme Court took a similar position. He paid for college playing professional football and performing in the theater where his voice was discovered. He was the third African American to attend Columbia Law School. He graduated but quit a legal position when a secretary refused to take dictation from him. About this time, he met Eslyn Cardozo Good, a Renaissance woman who had studied at Columbia University. They married in 1921, and soon thereafter, Essie Robeson took on the role of manager of her husband's career. His career took him instead to theaters and concert halls. Robeson performed the first full-length recital of African-American spirituals in 1925, and through the 1930s built an international reputation for his concerts.
I think Paul Robeson is a fascinating figure about whom people know very little. He's born in 1898 in Princeton, New Jersey, and he is the son of a freed slave. So he's kind of got that rebellious political spirit from a very early age, and it doesn't take him long to excel in a number of fields. He actually stars in 1925 in his first major feature film, which is a silent film called Body and Soul. In this, he plays this extraordinary double role, playing a corrupt, crooked, firebrand Pentecostal preacher and his mild-mannered twin brother. It might sound like a slightly ironic choice to talk about Body and Soul, because this silent era movie robs Robeson of his rich voice, but the expressiveness with which he performs and inhabits these two very different characters, and his power just careens through the screen, even though it was a silent movie. When you look at something like The Emperor Jones, the adaptation of Eugene O'Neill's play, which is, I believe, the first time that a black actor in a major American studio picture is billed above white actors, he's taking a risk on playing an ambiguous and complicated character who does, in some ways, revert to those anti-black stereotypes that we talk about, the idea of this savage brute. But he's brave enough to take that role on and bring layers to it.
Takes a silver bullet to kill Brutus Jones.
It didn't save him from being criticized in the black community and the black press for in some ways perpetuating these negative stereotypes. These are happening in segregated theaters, so this is a Jim Crow era America. So you have these independent black filmmakers like Michaud and Spencer Williams who are operating entirely independently of the Hollywood system, and they're making films about black subjects for black audiences. I mean, these films were quite widely seen, so his talent was recognized and he wasn't afraid to put himself forward. Arguably, Robeson's most famous role in Hollywood is in Showboat, where he sings the standard Old Man River, which has become immortalized since. And his version of that is the most famous version of it, I think.
Old Man River, that old man river, he must know something, but don't say nothing.
In films like Body and Soul and The Emperor Jones, you do see Robeson taking on these more complex and complicated roles before settling into perhaps some more slightly kind of sanctified, saintly roles. But as James Baldwin wrote, a lot of these black actors have had scripts where the complexity is not in the script. So they've had to smuggle complexity into the scripts that simply aren't there. And we have to look into the actors' eyes and study their performances to see what they're bringing to us and their lived experiences as black people.
Daniel delivered Daniel, did my Lord deliver Daniel, and why not every man?
Jerome Kern wrote Showboat's Old Man River especially for Robeson, and through roles in movies like Showboat, The Emperor Jones, and The Proud Valley, Paul Robeson brought the first serious portrayals of African Americans to film. The first black actor to portray Shakespeare's Othello with a white cast, Robeson appeared in a 1931 London production and in a record-breaking 1940 Broadway run. Through travel to the Soviet Union in 1934, where he was deeply impressed with the lack of racism he felt, and to Spain in 1937, where he sang for forces fighting Franco's fascism, he became politically aware.
But what I'm interested in is complete subordination of the rights of individuals to the state, the denial of fundamental rights and liberties which are characteristic of a representative form of government, such as freedom of speech, the press, of assembly, of religious worship, and result in the maintenance of control over the people through fear, terrorism, and brutality. I've been all over the United States speaking and attempting to speak, and I have been experiencing in our own country today this very thing of control over the people through fear, terrorism, and brutality. This is happening in all parts of this land. Now, it seems to me if we're protecting the people of the United States, that these protections are necessary from quite another point of view than I can see in their so-called necessity in this necessity.
Well, do you believe that they are
I'm saying these
entitled to protection even as
I
provided
just want to
in
finish
this
my
bill?
point, and I also again want to say that it says that
This man wasn't here. We let him into his place.
the complete subordination, the same paragraph, complete subordination of the rights of individuals to the state, denial of fundamental rights and liberties and so forth. I think that this is a complete, for example, definition, since our states are sovereign powers, so to speak, except for the rights delegated to the federal government, a complete description of, say, what happens to Negro people today in Mississippi, Alabama, many other states of the Union. And the necessity for legislation, it seems to me, I will go into what I consider the constitutionality, the denial of civil rights under this bill, in fact, to the whole question of the way we have placed this whole question in the bill. But it seems to me that the necessity for legislation that might concern, I suggest, with the committee today and for some time to come, that since in this bill, perhaps hundreds, thousands of Americans would like to speak on it, and that it should, that not only today, but perhaps in the future, there should be opportunity for that. I'm tremendously interested, before approaching in detail this bill, just to ask you a question as to why, in the light of the terror that I've seen and the denial of rights, that the lynching bill is not sort of before the Senate at this time. It hasn't come out of the committee.
I couldn't answer that. I'm personally trying to get it out of the committee.
I think that that if there are any kind of activities that strike at the very basis of our democratic way of life, that this bill certainly should come out. Both parties have gone on record for the civil rights of the Negro people, and it looks as though you might get through without it. So I'm certainly hoping that this bill will come out, and perhaps even this bill could be put aside for the moment and extended later to see that these rights should be should be guaranteed. Now, as for the bill, I see it, the whole question of protecting the rights of the people of the United States, against the background, and the whole question of communism, for example, which is brought in every minute.
Mr. Robeson,
Just, can I go on to my question? I'll answer that in just a second.
are you a member of the
I
public?
will answer that in just a moment. Can I go on to my discussion?
Yes.
I will answer that. The whole background, I would say so, I would strike at the very root of the conception of what is in these first paragraphs. For example, the origin, the world movement with its origins and so forth. I mean, does Mr. Monk, or whoever framed the bill, understand that the origins of this kind of thing were in, say, the English Industrial Revolution, and the time of Robert Owen, in the roots of the poverty of England, which was responsible for the English poor and indentured servants coming to build America itself. This didn't just spring up the other day in some part of Europe, a part of the whole struggle of human beings to improve their lot. One of the most important sections for myself being my own people here, the Negro people in America. So I see the whole framework of the bill, in reality, from my travels about this country and otherwise about the world, in the framework of what we understand as Americans, and what we mean by our democratic ways of life here, as expressed in this paragraph, that it means certainly from our own American history, from the beginning of our struggle for freedom from England, down through the Civil War which freed my own people, it means to the New Deal an extension. If we mean anything, we mean an extension of the democratic rights and full citizenship to people who do not yet have them. That would include not only 1/10 of the population, the Negro people, it would include, for example, many of the Spanish-American people that I saw in Pueblo, Colorado a few months ago, practically living in hovels under the ground. It would include many in the fruit fields of California, in the whole deep South and all over America. And so in approaching this whole problem of the struggle today in Europe and elsewhere, what has happened in 1917 in Russia, what's happened in Yugoslavia, many places, it has to do with trying, with millions and millions of people who are denied very basic rights, economic, social, and political, of trying to build a decent way of life. Against it have been many forces, the most important of which we joined hands against, the forces of fascism. Now, in going about America today, I say that when I was in Kansas City and I see the police beating workers over the head because they want a decent living, terrorizing the Negro people in West Virginia and all over, I say these are the essence of Isaac trying to actually stop the struggle of the people to get the democratic rights which they don't have. And I go so far as to say that I feel, I've been in the Mr. Munt's state in South Dakota. I was attacked by it once when I sang there. That in the whole discussion, and we can take it up in detail, of defining what is a communist party, what is a front organization, and what has happened in fact throughout America, where they have terrorized people from joining any kind of liberal struggle. Just a second. That this bill seems to me to have as its basic idea not to help the people of the United States or any other people, but to actually stop the struggle by terrorizing people to get rights for Negro people, for workers, and for other Americans who still haven't full citizenship.
Recognized throughout the world for his support of civil rights, Robeson headed an organization challenging President Truman to support an anti-lynching law and co-founded the Progressive Party. Robeson spoke out against oppression at every opportunity, regardless of the consequences. And for Robeson, those consequences were heavy, costing him his passport, his freedom to travel, and effectively, his career. Through the 1940s, his songs and his concerts became increasingly politicized. Joe Hill became a staple of his repertoire.
By arrangement with the Scottish area of the National Union of Mine Workers, Paul Robeson gave a special concert for miners in the Usher Hall, Edinburgh. All the Scottish coalfields organized parties to the capital that evening. by rail and by road. They arrived in their hundreds. That evening, the miners came to see Robeson. But the same afternoon, Paul Robeson had been to the miners. Accompanied by the area agent, colliery manager, and union officials, he kept a dinner date in the canteen at Woolmet Colliery on the outskirts of Edinburgh. When you see a miner and a film star together, the husky one's the miner. Well, usually. And before he went away, of course, they asked him to sing.
I dreamed I saw Joe here last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. In Salt Lake City, Joe, says I, him standing by my bed. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. And standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they can never kill went on to organize, went on to organize. I dreamed I saw Joe here last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. I never died, says he.
At 1949's World Peace Conference in Paris, Robeson decried African-American participation in foreign wars and a government that would treat them as second-class citizens.
For the first time as I stepped on Soviet soil, I felt myself a full human being. A full human being. So it is unthinkable to me today that colored peoples in any part of the world would ever join a war or attacks upon the Soviet Union.
When he returned to America, rioting broke out at concerts in Peekskill, New York. Anti-communists and racists threw stones and attacked audience members while police turned a blind eye. From then on, a fear of violence surrounded Robeson's appearances, and political terror was used against him. In the 40s, he'd been among the top concert artists in the world, his 1947 income reportedly exceeding $100,000. By 1952, however, that figure had plummeted to $6,000 as he found himself under constant FBI surveillance, with his concerts canceled, his records pulled from store shelves, and himself blacklisted from performing for major concert halls, television, and radio. Called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, he was asked, "Why do you not stay in Russia?" He responded, "Because my father was a slave, and my people died to build this country, and I'm going to stay here and have a part of it just like you, and no fascist-minded people will drive me from it. Is that clear?"
I stand here struggling for the rights of my people to be full citizens in this country, and we are not. We are not in Mississippi. They're not in Montgomery, Alabama. They're not in Washington. They are nowhere. And that is why I'm here today.
Robeson's passport was revoked, denying him all foreign travel and income from foreign performances, even in Canada. But Paul Robeson would not be silenced. He continued to perform whenever and wherever he could, most often for unions or churches. In 1952 and 1953, Canadian union leaders assisted Robeson in defying the American government's attempts to suppress him by organizing concerts at Peace Arch Park. At the 1953 concert, as in many places that he traveled, Robeson spoke of his political views and the link between those and his song.
It means much to us in America, much to the Americans struggling for peace in the Northwest. Some of the finest people in the world under pressure today, facing jail, facing hostile courts, for the simple fact that they are struggling for peace, struggling for a decent America, where all of us who have helped build that land can live in decency and in goodwill. As for myself, as I said last year, I remain the same Paul that you have known throughout all these years, the same Paul, but time has made it so that everyone, I included, must fight harder today to preserve the basic liberties guaranteed to us Americans by our Constitution.
And in time, the lyrics to Old Man River evolved from a lament into a song of strength.
I keeps laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. And Old Man River, he'll just keep rolling along.
When no one can hear you, this piece of metal at the bottom of the sea, it means the world.
Hello, Paul.
Hello? Hello?
Paul Robeson once travelled the globe, an international superstar performing to sell-out audiences across America and the world. Film, theatre, song or speech, Robeson made people want to listen. Now they can't. The US State Department have revoked his passport because his powerful voice is radically off-message. He talks of lynchings, corporate greed, of segregation. And in the 1950s, at the height of McCarthyism, his left-wing views are enough to have him branded communist, un-American, a threat to the nation. And they don't just bar him from leaving the country, they bar him from performing in public anywhere. But they haven't counted on Robeson's unlikely ally, a new technology that can set him free. The submarine repeater is an amplifier for telephone cables. It can boost a fading signal 1,000,000-fold, meaning phone signals, and so phone lines, can go further, can go anywhere. It's a solid worker, tough enough to withstand freezing cold and crushing pressure, tough enough to work on the ocean bed. Now a string of these high-tech British and American repeaters spans the Atlantic. For the first time in history, a phone line connects the two countries. And Robeson's British supporters have a brainwave. Maybe now he can reach them without leaving America. In 1957, a crowd of supporters packs into St Pancras Town Hall in London to hear their hero sing. Tonight, the medium is truly the message: solidarity. Everyone waits on tenterhooks. And then...
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful.
Will it come over all right?
Oh, I can't tell you.
That's wonderful. Hello, hello, hello.
By joining forces, repeaters have given one voice the power to cross an ocean. The quality is so high that some of the audience think they're hearing a record. And the message is clear enough to be heard well beyond the town hall. The following year, the US Supreme Court declares it unconstitutional for Robeson's passport to be barred. He's free. All with a little help from his friends and the information age, giving us all a voice.
But Old Man River, it just keeps rolling along.
The blacklist lifted in 1958, and Robeson made a triumphant return to the stage in a sold-out Carnegie Hall concert. With his passport reinstated, he left America to perform again as Othello at Stratford-upon-Avon's Shakespeare Festival.
Shakespeare, the genius that he was, seemed to foreshadow and understand many of the problems that have since arisen in our world, perhaps were present then. First, I would say that here is a part which has dignity for the Negro actor. Often we don't get those opportunities. And I would say that my people will be very proud of my or any other Negro actor appearing in such a part. I think also that to me Othello is one of a different culture. Shakespeare insists that he's African. Some argument whether the word black and the fact that he's from Africa is very clear to me. And that Shakespeare posed this problem of a, say, black man in a white system. Just come over from America, we like to say pass and chance and dew for the morning dew. And I happened to pick up an old script of Shakespeare, and the dew was very clear. It was D-I-E-W, and it was not chance, C-H-A-U-N-C-E, so it was dew, like in lieu of, and chance and dance. Very, very Shakespearean way. And one terrible, difficult sound was my, almost at the beginning of the play, my services, which I have done the signory, my services. I would say my services. I had to work on that very hard. But later I took some special work at the University of London, and also in my university days I majored in English, and I have records from the earliest time of Anglo-Saxons, as a matter of fact, through Chaucer. And of course, since I worked on my songs with Roger Quilter, and I would have to use the role. I couldn't walk out here and say, drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine. It's got to be very, drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine.
Daddy was coming out of the box in the corner of the living room. We had one of these Victrolas you'd play the records on. And it was in the corner of the living room. That sound came out there. That's Daddy's voice. See? So one day he finally came back from tour, and one day I was crawling around, and the same voice coming up there, very confusing. Why isn't it in the box? And then I saw the shoe, about a size 14 and a half, so it's one of these things. So that was my introduction. My memory of that was, he had this enormous voice. He could almost blow this place out. But the first sound I heard from him was like a sort of a gentle rumbling caress. Just a wonderful sound. And very gentle hands. Of course, they were huge, so these huge things sort of scooped me up. And then the face was this huge smile. And the eyes, very large eyes, and very, very gentle. So I have this image of Dad, which I still carry from that first.
Lots of folk gathered there.
how is it that the American Negro, who for so long has been a second-class citizen in the United States...
Still is, I'm sorry.
Well, how is it that he's contributed so much to American culture?
Well...
Music, dance, everything you can think of.
Well, I have to be very modest about that. I would say certainly as we look at the African peoples in Nigeria, for example, I just got a wonderful invitation to go to Nigeria to be present at the installation at the Governor General Ezekwe, an old friend, who will now, and I had to cable him. I'm in Australia. I certainly would like to be with you, but I'm out here with some good folks. But I'll get to Nigeria later.
Mr. Robeson, do you feel that Africa is to some extent an affinity for it, a home, or do you still feel America is essentially your home? How do you feel?
Well, let me come here. I'll come to that in just a second. But to come back to it, so I would say the Africans and the American Negroes have turned out to be an extraordinarily gifted people. The great tragedy is that by not making us full-class citizens as yet in America, they may be losing, I don't know how much yet. And to come back, I would say that unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America, the primary wealth. You have to have accumulated wealth to start, you know, to build. You did it another way here in Australia. You had to build your accumulated wealth too. You just came and took it, you know what I mean? And that's what they did in most of the countries. That's what you Europeans did. You just took it. We got to catch up with you a little bit. And so in America. So there's a lot of America that belongs to me yet, you understand? But just like a Scottish American is proud of being from Scotland, I'm proud for being African. Now in our school books, they tried to tell me that all Africans were savages, till I got to London and found most of the Africans I knew were going to Oxford and Cambridge and doing very well, and learned their culture. And even once somebody had the temerity, after one had conquered the Chinese people and imposed upon them the opium trade and everything else, to suggest that they were a backward people, just the people who had been civilized so long over the rest of you folks didn't make any sense at all. So somewhere, it was wonderful to find about the colored peoples of the world that they were very advanced. So I would say today that I'm an American who is infinitely prouder to be of African descent, no question about it, no question about it. I'm an Afro-American, and I don't use the word American ever loosely again.
Now, this was the feeling. This was the feeling.
That's right.
That when you were in London about 1937, 38, you really had the world at your feet. Then, I mean, you're a tremendous success. You were recognised all over the world, and yet you went back to America. Was this this was the feeling that took you back?
I felt I had to go back to my people. That's right. The going was tough, and today I can go back. I just had my passport renewed. I could go back to pretty tough times now. But any time I could get a telegram next week that the Negro people had gathered somewhere in one of their conferences, as they could, and say, Paul, in the difficulties that are going on in America, would you come back and help us? I would take the plane as soon as I finished my engagements.
Mr. Robeson, would you say that the Negro peoples of the United States are organized or are gathered together or are of a piece?
Can I put it to you this way, that we are very religious people, very religious people. My father was a part of a church called the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. It numbers about 1 million people across the country. My brother's pastor of one of the largest churches in New York, the Mother Church. It led the struggle for freedom in the time of slavery. It was founded in 1796, something like that. Great heroes of our people came out of our church. We are extremely highly organized, 1 million. Out of 18 million, there are Baptists, 4 million organized. 3 more million organized. We are the most organized people almost on the face of the earth. And we are so organized, that if the Negro people of New York, Michigan, Illinois, and the main populated states of America tomorrow, I mean this week, decide to vote as one unit, if they ask, is Nixon going to help the Negro people most? Do we think he will? Or Kennedy? Whichever way we decide, will decide who's president of the United States. That's how organized we are with that.
I don't know that organized is quite the word I meant.
Okay.
I meant, although that ended, but as of one mind, perhaps.
Well, no, I say, like today, we are of one mind on this. We want our freedom.
Yes.
We want, let's put it another way, we want to be full citizens, first class, not second class.
Now, I'd like to
we want to go to schools as everybody else, that's right.
Well, we had a meeting on the site, and Robeson was introduced to the workers, and he spoke about his relationship with the workers in other countries because he was a prominent figure in the international working class movement.
And this is one about Joe Hill,
one of our great heroes in the American working class movement. They framed him on a murder charge, but his spirit still lives in the hearts of all the American working class. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. In Salt Lake City, Joe, says I, him standing by my bed. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. And standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they can never kill went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where working men defend their rights, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you'll find Joe Hill.
Illness forced his return to America in 1963. Thereafter, he rarely made public appearances and never again realized the public acclaim he once held. Paul Robeson passed away on January 23, 1976. We honor him not only for his countless and varied achievements as a performing artist, forerunner of the civil rights movement, and political force, but for his passion, courage, and personal sacrifice with which he earned them. His legacy as a great and visionary American shall live on.
But old man River, he just keeps rolling along. Sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that barge, lift that bale. You show a little grit and you lands in jail. But I keeps laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. And old man River, he'll just keep rolling.